Okay, hi everybody. My name is Stephanie Kraft, and I'm here with some of my friends, Amphi.
Hi.
Hi, Amphi, Athena,
Hi.
and Peter. So, what we're doing is I asked them to join me so that we could all discuss the events that are happening, mostly in the United States, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on around the world, but we're all located in the United States, and we can each talk about where we are. I'm outside of Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia. I'm in Fairfax, Virginia. And things are pretty calm and quiet here, so that's nice. And right now, I don't think I have that much more about myself to introduce myself, but Peter, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Great. I'm also in Northern Virginia as well, and haven't really, I've lived in different states, grew up in New England. So I guess my background, kind of what brings me to this is first generation of a Cuban immigrant. Went to a, mostly all white high school, in a sleepy New York, outside of New York commuting town. Graduated high school, went to college, didn't finish, but I went into the military, so I did that for a little while. So I have that perspective and of what the military is all about, which I think has some really good things. Not a big fan of standing army. Big fan of the Constitution and of America and our ideals. And I'm concerned about where things are going with the country and the erosion of individual rights and liberties. So that's kind of why I'm here, to talk about that and to learn and share from everybody else.
Okay, Peter, I have a question for you before we get to introduce everybody else. And because I just am not that knowledgeable about the military, what do you mean by a standing army? What is that?
So we have a professional military, and if you look back at the founders, they didn't want that. As citizens, we are the military, the militia, to be called up and to protect and serve. Not this giant, military industrial complex. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. So you look at Northrop, Raytheon, all these companies that make billions of dollars from the federal government to build weapons, to build ships, and that really wasn't what the founders wanted for the military to be. Have a small core, and then when we need it, everybody should be trained and ready to go. And it's turned itself where now, you have issues where we have other, agencies like CIA and stuff that are militarized and get involved in, all these different situations around the globe. And I just don't think that is beneficial, because as you can see, one of the things, right, we're going to talk about with Trump, we now have 282 former and current military executives, generals and above, who are now coming out speaking against Trump. It's a soft coup, and so you have the military that has been infiltrated by certain ideologies, and if we didn't have that large military industrial complex, I don't think that would be the case.
Okay, very interesting. Good point. This is an education for me, even. That's why I wanted all of us to get together and talk, because people out there in the general public don't know, a lot of what's going on, or the details, including me. Everything is so complex. There's so much information. There are so many agencies. I mean, there's just so much going on that most people really know very little. I'm so glad you shared that with us, because that's a whole, it's a new perspective to look at. Thank you for that. Athena, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, I have a question first. For Peter, those 282 generals, are they corrupt? Are those corrupted ones? Like working deep state, or is that just in total?
I mean, I've only seen reports, so I don't know. But I mean, you know, one of the most prominent is General Powell, and you know, if you look, so now you know, so I have friends who are on the left who are posting about how he's so brave that he's coming out against Trump, but yet, you know, whatever 20 years ago when you know everybody was saying you know that he was lying about getting us into Iraq with weapons of mass destruction and all that. So and you know that and Mattis. So I don't know if they're corrupt or if deep state and politicians have have skeletons or dirt or something, but it definitely seems something nefarious about what's going on with these guys.
Gotcha. Yeah, I actually think that they're going to be they're draining the swamp of those people. It's just a matter of the rank, the level, how high up they are. I think it's harder for them to get, like they say, like the chess game. Yeah. Anyway, so my name is Athena, and I am an artist, a writer, and a truth seeker, and I have been my whole life. I've been on this quest for peace on earth. I've been laughed at my whole life because people say that's impossible. People tell me that life is not fair, just accept it. And I can't accept that, because if you can make life unfair, you can make it fair. And so what's happening on the planet right now, I think is very exciting. Granted, it's uncomfortable, but I see this as the Great Awakening, something that I have been on the path to make happen whichever way I can, just by going where I'm guided. And so because of that, I've been to over 30 countries and on 6 continents. And I started by going to school in many of them, and then traveling or just taking jobs or whatever I could. I've always been interested in other cultures and noticing the differences, but more the similarities. So I realized that the problems that I encounter in the third world countries are now in America. Like before, when I was younger, I started traveling. It was like America had everything. And I would go over to these third world countries and help them do various things because, like they didn't, for example, like a trash program. They would have litter everywhere, and people didn't understand. You need to pick up your litter, or you need to organize it. They hadn't understand about greening. But the more that I lived in these cultures, I realized that all of this American knowledge that I have is good to a point. But America, well, I don't want to say America, but the West is the one that's been corrupting all of these places. So like if we would have just left them alone, they would have been fine. And like I lived in Jordan for a total of 7 years, but 1 year, 25 years ago, and then 6 years right before the Gulf War, or the Syrian War broke out, and Arab Spring and all of that. And I really noticed how much the West has messed up the Middle East, and how many lies they have told, and everything is opposite. You know what I mean? So now it's like it's very easy for me to find the truth, because it's just opposite of what they tell you. And anything that they're pushing, any agenda, like for example the flu shot, okay, back in 2018, I could not believe how they were pushing the flu shot. And even I was like at a grocery store, and there was like a little tent outside that says free ice cream with flu shot. And I thought, how can people not see how obvious that is? They want you to get the flu shot. Something's wrong with the flu shot. And I've listened to so many videos and read so much information that it's very hard for me to keep track of all my sources of where I hear these bits of information from. But I did read something that the flu shot, that particular year, 2018-19, is connected to the COVID. Something like, and I don't know, because I'm not a medical expert, you know, it's like I have certain expertise, but medical biology is really not mine. But it makes sense to me that they would put something in that flu shot so that now when this wave of COVID, if it's real, would make those people susceptible. You know what I mean? So anyway, so I'm very good at connecting the dots. And I have dedicated the last 20 years of my life as my mission on peace on earth. And I really feel we're close. So, and one more thing, I think that it's important, like when I listen to other people talking, like on YouTube, you know, just bits of information, I don't really see a whole lot of people throwing in the spiritual aspect to it, in the higher picture. Because really, after we figure out what's going on in the Matrix 3D, it's very complicated, but we can solve it by going higher up and sending it up the positive vibration. You know, it's like we need to figure it out so that we can figure out the solutions, but then we need to move on. And somehow we've got to educate the collective enough for them to wake up, to understand, but then not dwell on it and tell them those agendas you're reading about, those are old timelines. We're busting through those every day. Every day. So they're here learning about, oh my God, 5G. Well, Trump has already addressed that like 2 months ago. He said something about it, you know, that don't worry about 5G. I already know the Chinese equipment is bad. We're taking it down. We're repairing the satellites. And I'm telling you, 3 hours after he said that, I saw a guy at the back at my 5G tower who was adjusting the 5G. And I'm like, wow, he worked so fast. And then 3 days later is when people were seeing those satellites, you know, that Elon Musk or whatever it was up in the sky. So I kind of take it as, well, he's really doing it, right? Because if not, then we're all doomed.
Yeah.
And I don't like that agenda. So anyway, that's enough about me. So thank you.
Good. Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, he did stop Huawei, if that's how you pronounce that company, you know, from allowing them to have their 5G contracts here. So he's doing something about it. So Amphi, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. So let's see. Well, I'm a writer, and I am most known for writing about my near-death experience, which happened when I was 15, about, gosh, I don't even know, 30 some odd years ago now. But, you know, but I also have, per this particular conversation about current events, I have an interesting background that I really feel has led me. It's almost like I was meant to be here. I know we all were, but I really can see how the things that I was learning about through my father growing up have it's almost like this is my mission right now, is to be writing about this stuff. So basically political commentary. So what it is my father, I come from an unusual family. I'm in Northern California, born and raised, born in San Francisco. My father, incredibly intelligent, both my parents, very intelligent people. You know, they were raised in the 40s and 50s, and they, my father was both are artists, incredible artists. One's a musician, a jazz musician, my father, and my mother's a painter and a poet. But they were Republican, which is interesting. My father did kind of dabble in communist stuff when he was a beatnik back in the late 50s, early 60s. But pretty quickly, you know, and I'd love to hear from him what it was that changed him. But something changed him, and he realized that it was a terrible, horrible ideology, really deadly, in fact. And he became a conservative Republican. And so I had a very, very unique upbringing for that reason, and also because I am uneducated, or I am self-educated. I missed the 3rd and 4th grades completely, ran around pretty much feral, didn't know how to tell time, didn't know how to tie my shoelaces. And then from then on, I was put in special education. was a DNF student, and I ended up dropping out when I was 15, and have not gone back since. I also did not have television in my house from age 15 onward till now. So I think that really gave me a very, very interesting view into things, a unique view, because I am not, I was pretty, I couldn't stand from an early age to be indoctrinated or made to jump through hoops that I didn't understand why, or arbitrary hoops. And so then the other component to that is that I was raised in this Republican, my father really taught me about Republicanism and sort of more libertarian ways of thinking. And yet we were the only Republican family I knew my entire childhood at all. It was all, I'm in Northern California, granola. And, you know, we looked the part. We were artists. We were a very cool family. But, you know, people loved coming over to visit us. But our politics were very different. And so learning in school about Republicans as early as, you know, social studies classes in the seventh, it hurt quite a bit because I was hearing things from my teachers, suggestive things about Republicans that didn't match my own experience with my family. It didn't match at all. It was, you know, this implication that they are selfish, cold-hearted, greedy. And so the brainwashing was definitely, the indoctrination was definitely there early, at least in Northern California. And by the time, you know, by 8th grade, our teachers told us to leave class and go protest George Bush. And, you know, so they were very, very, you know, they had their opinions and they had no problem telling, you know, regardless of what George Bush was or wasn't, they had no problem telling children who knew nothing about it to go be influential in something. They were using us as tools, really, so that we could get on the news and see the children are even doing this, sort of like Greta. You see what I'm saying?
What was that?
Huh?
What year was that?
87 or 88.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So yeah, it has given me a very, and then my father was my father, it's hard to explain how he was. He was immensely influential in my politics, and I see that now more than ever. But he never sat me down and really schooled me on it. It was things that I would hear in passing and what I gathered, you know, being raised around him. But what I'm trying to say is he didn't try to like make me to believe a certain thing. He knew he knew all about indoctrination in schools. He was already aware of it way back then. He was already aware of the communist infiltration that happened in our government, in our churches, in basically every single institution in the United States was infected with the Marxist ideology. So what happened, I don't know if you want me to wait until that's my introduction.
Yeah, I do. I would love for you to talk more about that, educate everybody about that.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question just regarding that?
Yeah.
Your story. You said that you were the only Republican? Did your friends know that? I mean, were you open about it, or was it kind of just a secret thing? You know, just your own personal thing.
I didn't announce it because I wasn't interested in politics.
Right.
So I just but I noticed like there was a few communist my boyfriend, one of my first boyfriends when I was 16, was from a communist family. And his father sat me down and told me about it. And that's how I learned a lot through observation and through picking things up, and it all culminated later through my life. It grew, and I had started understanding some things and putting some pieces together. Like our neighbors were also full-blown communists, actually an activist family, lifelong, constantly there to change things. And so I have a lot of experience with communists, and I learned about them through observation, not even really understanding what it was they were doing until the past like 10 years. It's sort of, I've started to, a full picture has come. You see what I mean?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, do you want me to go into the indoctrination now, or do you want to go?
Yeah, I would really love to hear about that. Yes.
Okay. So if anybody wants to read, one of the most influential books was written in 1952, and if anyone, I highly recommend it. It's called Witness, and it's by Whittaker Chambers. Whittaker Chambers was a communist infiltrator in the 1930s in the government. He was also in media, and he was part of this underground thing that was operating all over the United States. And in fact, it was worldwide. So this has been happening worldwide, and it's serving now it's the globalist thing, the New World Order. That's what it has been culminating to since the 30s. But what they were doing was they were meeting in secret, and they were connected with the Soviets directly. And the Soviets, it was just very complex like psychological tunnels and groups, and what they were doing was, the mission was to infiltrate all of our influential media, Hollywood, schools, especially universities. And from that, this is a short synopsis, okay? So from that, we get the EPA, the DOJ, the WHO, the CDC, all of these, any of those. I don't even know them all. All of these departments are communist in their inception. That's what they were. They are unelected bureaucrats that actually rule our lives. For example, great example. So these people created that, and a lot of people have no clue. And in fact, I would even say, I don't even know if Donald Trump understands what this was. And I think that even if he does, there's people who think, well, that's okay that they were created by communists, because then maybe that's a good idea to have those. I think that attitude has gone on quite a bit. I personally am a libertarian because of everything that I've learned and because of my upbringing. I understand the simplicity of it, and why personally for me, I can really see how that works. It's a better system. It's a more honest system. It's less subject to corruption, in my opinion. But to go back to this, so an example of how this is, for example, EPA and the health department. My ex is Jordanian, Athena, and I was in Jordan the same time you were, the last time you were there.
Oh my gosh, what part? You just got to tell me quickly.
I was in Amman, Aqaba, Salt. My boyfriend, ex-fiance, grew up in Salt. So,
Right
but
on.
his family, yeah. But it was an interesting time to be there with Gaddafi and everything that was going on. It was, yeah. So anyway, so my boyfriend and I had a cafe together in San Francisco for several years, and there was this new ordinance in San Francisco on small businesses where you have to have now a compost, okay? He had had the business for 15 years, and that was before compost was needed. And the place, frankly, was not set up for a compost. If you are going to have a compost, you need a backdoor area because it's going to have flies. It's going to have a lot of flies. It attracts them within just a few hours. They start coming. So they wanted us to have one. God bless Musa. He tried. He kept trying to do it. It would not work because it attracted too many flies. It started stinking within a couple hours. We had a small, tiny cafe with no back door. So you see, we decided we couldn't follow that rule. Well, the EPA, and the health department would never, when the health department would see flies like that, they would threaten us, fine us, threaten to shut us down. You see? So health department, communist, EPA, communist, unelected bureaucrats that rule over people. So you're not free. This is not freedom. Okay. So the EPA, now this is frightening. This is frightening. It is really chilling what I saw that day. And this is almost 10 years ago that this happened. We're operating a busy morning as usual, end of the morning, making bagels, music popping, everything's fun. It was great to work there. And a woman barges into the cafe and says, she flashes some kind of like, almost like she's flashing a badge. I don't know what she was showing us. It's just so threatening. And she's about 20 years younger than me. And she says, I mean, this young woman could not have been, she was right out of college. And she said, I'd like to speak to the owner here. And she says this in front of customers, interrupts us in front of customers, a line of customers. And she said, well, what I'd like to find out is why you don't have a compost yet. I'm with the EPA. And we tried to explain it to her. She kept interrupting us. This is all in front of customers. Kept interrupting us. Oh, by the way, she didn't even ask. She barged right into our back room. Didn't ask her anything. I mean, we're the owners. It was shocking. And finally, I'm a sweet person, but if you do that to me, I have a lion that rages out of me. Almost can't control it. And I got up to her and put my finger in her face and I said, are you looking to shut down small mom and pop businesses? Because this is exactly what you are doing. Is that what you got into this line of work for? And yeah, and that intimidated her and she never came back. And we never actually heard from them.
Bravo!
Yeah, I mean, that's
a great example of taking your personal power back, because you know what? I believe that's what we need to do in these times. And it works every time you do that, right?
Absolutely. You have to feel that you have to follow that inner spark that's honest and authentic and truthful. Yep. And that's what that was,
And when you confront them, it's almost like the good is confronting the evil. And because you are the good and you are right and you are standing in your power, they cower. I've had policemen do the same thing,
right.
And it made me think I can do anything. I have that power. You just got to know.
Yes, righteous.
Yeah.
It's that's and so that's an example of unelected bureaucrats that have so much power. And by the way, we are paying through the nose for these organizations, for them to bully us. So, and the last bit of this to connect is that the big corporations, which are tied up in government, by the way, they can afford to pay the fees, fines, and regulations. The small mom and pops can't. And so that's why you see less and less small, unique, amazing businesses. Small, don't you want to live? I ask this of all people right now. Don't you want to live in a community with a tailor, a bakery, do you know what I'm saying? The old, you've got a tailor, a shoemaker, a cobbler, all of that can come back. They're not gone. They honestly do not have to be gone. Those small communities have been usurped by this very agenda. I know many disagree with me, but I have, since knowing the history of what happened with this infiltration, and like I said, they've even infiltrated churches. They infiltrated the Catholic Church. They actually got, back in the 30s, they got people that they told to go into the Catholic Church and become a priest, and you can never tell anyone what you're really doing there. And so it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder about the child abuse. It makes you wonder about all of that. I'm not saying that Catholics would be perfect without that, but it does, you can't, once you learn this stuff, you can't help but wonder, what would they have been like if they were never infiltrated? Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm not for or against Catholics. It's just, it's where my mind goes. So they had communists infiltrate and pose as priests for their whole lives. And the only mission they had was to push the communist agenda, but also to demoralize the church. Do you see what I mean? To do things that would rot the church from within. So, and that's schools, universities, all of it.
Yep, everything you're saying is basically it's ideological subversion, it's infiltration from within, and that's, you know, I just watched a video by Yuri Bezmenov yesterday discussing the different steps to really overthrowing an entire country from within. And it's exactly what you are talking about. And this man was what was he, like a KGB spy in Russia?
Mm-hmm.
And he came over here and I guess started teaching about this to educate people. And I would recommend everybody look up Yuri Bezmenov on YouTube and just watch his videos, because he breaks down the system of the steps of how you come into a country, and it's exactly what you're saying, Amphi. Infiltrate schools, public schools and universities, church, actually media, so and affect people psychologically and turn their ideas into start the degradation of society, which we have all seen in our entire lifetime. We all grew up with Brady Bunch, Andy Griffith, Leave It to Beaver. Like there was purity. It's not even that it was so fake. It's human nature. Human nature is good and honest and wanting to get along and have a good life. But what you see now in movies and the music industry and TV it's literally horrific. It's you have a visceral reaction because it's so against human nature. It's so over sexualized and violent and things that are not the norm, but they've become pervasive and shifted people's beings. I mean, they're in all ways. And so we're facing a lot of problems because of that, from suicide to drug abuse and alcohol addiction, to other kinds of addictions and emptiness going on with people younger than we are. And it's really it's really disturbing to witness. And so there are so many levels of this going on. It's everything you were talking about. And to the point where I don't remember what you said, but something that you said made me write a little note here on my paper to tell a story. And I don't know why, but I'll tell it anyway. And I think the reason I'm sharing this is to give an example of the deceit, the level of lying and cover up in every agency, in every faction in our country. And we could probably extrapolate that to the world, but I don't know. I've lived in a couple other countries, but I didn't really learn that much about the insides. But anyway, after World War I, the army buried munitions under the ground. These had not been exploded, but what else were they going to do with them? So they buried them. And I grew up in Washington, D.C., not Maryland, not Virginia. I grew up in D.C. And there was a neighborhood there. It wasn't a neighborhood, but an area that was called Arsenic Valley. And that's because that's where all the buried munitions were, with mustard gas, all kinds of dangerous toxins. Well, the builders knew about this, and they built entire neighborhoods on this land, including American University. And the neighborhood I grew up in is called Spring Valley. They renamed it from Arsenic Valley to Spring Valley.
Wow.
And I grew up there. Nobody knew this until people started getting sick. In the year 2000, Athena, I was living in Denver at the time, but that's where you are, by the way. My father was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. So I moved from Denver back to DC to take care of him. And the kind of cancer cell that he had was from environmental exposure, not smoking. There are two different kinds. So the doctor asked him, have you ever been exposed to anything? And my dad was like, I don't know, I grew up in Brooklyn. We didn't know, right? So during his illness, the Washingtonian magazine came out full with the cover story on the story of the munitions that had been found underground in our neighborhood. And people were very sick. And like, I like kind of kept track of my block, and it was like my block and then the cul-de-sac around it connected, just this one section, right, one block area, that my dad had cancer, and almost every other house people were dying at the same time of cancer, and or two houses next to each other had a very, very rare anemia that's very, very rare, blood disease that's deadly. And so, you know, in other parts of the neighborhood, dogs were dying, people were getting sick. It was very bad. So it was in the news and it became public. So the reason I'm sharing this story is to say that people who haven't awoken yet to the truths of the world might think, oh, they would never do that. Oh, they would never do that. You know, the army would never do that. The building company would never build on this contaminated land. And there's even more to the story, because after it became public, I started going to meetings with the Army Corps of Engineers, and they were saying that they started their cleanup job, and it was going to take until, okay, so this was in 2000. They projected this project would go on until 21, 25, because the cleanup is very detailed. Like you have to contain an entire, the family has to move out of the house. They have to contain an entire house, cover it with like shielding, and then work very meticulously to go into the soil step by step and clean it out. It's a very long job. And it was going on, and part of American University too was contaminated. But here's the thing, I stopped going to those meetings because it was too big of a battle anyway. But the entire neighborhood, the residents wanted to keep it hush hush because they didn't want their property values to go down. It's a very expensive neighborhood. And so that now nobody knows. I mean, a couple people know about this, but not many, because, oh no, we're going to keep the lid on this and not let people, we're not going to fight against the Army, against the EPA. We're not going to fight for our rights or anything. No, it all just went away because nobody wanted their property values to go down. So, you know, it's just an example of how, and, you know, my dad did pass away that year, but it's just an example of the level of cover-ups that have been going on for hundreds of years, thousands.
I want to say something about that. You're right. You're absolutely right. That, you know, when you start looking down in the rabbit hole, you realize how deep, how dark, and how connected it is. And it almost makes you feel overwhelmed. And like, I probably all of us have been looking for many years at this, so it's no surprise to us. But I do have to say, on between what you said, Stephanie, and what you said, Amphi, I have seen proof that Trump is addressing these issues. and not just Trump, but Trump and the White Hats. He is draining the swamp. And let me just tell you, for one, the Catholic Church, I'm not just giving all the credit just to Trump, but Trump and the White Hats, that has been going on for a very long time. And I'll just say, during this COVID time, Italy was one of the biggest hits. So I started doing some research in the two areas that were hit, Rome and God, why am I drawing a blank? It's in the south, Palomi. Well, anyway, it's in the south. So who's living in Rome? All the pedophile priests.
Yeah.
How many of them? There's thousands. I went onto the pedophile priest website, arrest website, and looked at the last 2 weeks of March. And in those last 2 weeks of March, is just the list they had. It was 83 pages and one page was at least 20. It was so many, I just gave up. I took a couple screenshots and I'm like, okay, people can go look for themselves. I can't. And this is around the world.
You're able to compare that with the past, though, as far as arrests?
On this website, yeah, you can go all the way back. So I was just looking currently to see if these were, if in fact COVID, I was trying to find what is the definition of that. And I found like 5 different definitions, and one of them is the crimes against humanity are being sought out, the criminals. And I had heard, okay, so Trump, he made crimes against humanity a law, like death, confiscation of wealth, and the death penalty. And that was like, I think 2019, the end, just very recently. And so now you have all of these arrests and stuff, and people that are testing positive, like, for example, Hollywood stars, right? I've already looked into the whole pedophilia ring for years and years, and I'm convinced it's true. So I always just kind of go from that, like, how do we take that darkness down? And so all of those Hollywood people, I think that, they did get tested positive, which means they're guilty of crimes against humanity. Mm-hmm. So then I looked in the south of Italy, and to see, because I heard one old folks had like 130 deaths. Mm-hmm. Right? So I look at that, and it turns out that's where the head of the mafia, Italian mafia, was from. And he was just arrested December 19th, 2019. He was just arrested.
Wow.
So huge.
Yeah.
At it. Of course, they're going to now go in and arrest all of the crime family. That's why in a nursing home, 150 people died, because they're all the top dogs. They're the grandfathers. And I think that those respirators, there's certain respirators that might have a deadly gas, because the reason why I'm saying that is because when I was doing research on people who died in America of COVID, one obituary said the couple was healthy. And this was the mom and dad of like the head of the NFL or somebody in football. Maybe it's just here in Denver. I'm forgetting. It was a couple months ago. But anyway, his mom and dad died 6 minutes apart. Okay, that's like an Illuminati number, 6, 3. And what it said was they were fine 3 weeks before. They were not feeling well. Then they went to the hospitals and were put on ventilators. And when they were taken off the ventilators, they died 6 minutes apart. To me, that's a clue. I think it's like a euthanasia one for criminals against humanity. And I have found one more thing, and then I'll let you guys comment. But because I took it back to America also. So I looked in New York, Denver, and Palm Springs, because I'm from Palm Springs area, and California was having a big epidemic, and I could see things happening there. So anyway, it turns out that on this particular day, one of them was 410, and another one was 529. Like, they all had numerological symbology. But one of the guys that I found that died was the inventor of asbestos. He also was responsible for killing all of the forest, the redwood forest in all of Northern California and Oregon and all of that. His company in the 50s came in, killed the forest, built siding for houses, dipped it in asbestos, So now that's cancer causing, right? Dumped the pollutants in the waters, polluted the air. Then in the like late 70s, 80s, he was sued. His company was sued for black mold in this asbestos. And what did he do? He skipped out. It was a class action lawsuit. He skipped out. He went to Canada. He did the same thing in Canada. Well, guess what? This man was living in Rancho Mirage, a Thunderbird Country Club, one of the biggest country clubs, the most nicest, living a happy life. He did pay off for those people. Well, guess what? He died unexpectedly of COVID. So now I'm to the point where I'm thinking Trump is really draining the swamp, and it's going on silently because, as you guys have said, it's everywhere. It's in the schools, it's in the churches, it's in the governments. And anyway, so I just wanted to tell you that. And I do have 3,000 pages of proof that I've been putting together to one day be able to,
Awesome.
to display it. You know what I mean? But it helps me understand that it's really not a deadly pandemic. It is a pandemic.
So did everybody hear about
Yes.
what was it, 30,000 troops sent over to Europe? It was the biggest deployment of military since World War II. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Was that when they sent them to Italy?
Yes. Right when the COVID thing hit over here. So, you know, there was some big operation going on, and I really think that it has to do with what you're talking about, Athena, which is, you know, rounding up these people, the Vatican, the mafia, who knows who, but just all of the bad guys. And so, like, did you see that video of the Pope at the window waving, and then when he turned around, he disappeared? It was actually a hologram. Did you see that?
Yeah.
So that was also during this time where the Pope came to the window to say hello and say something to the world, and when he turned around, he vanished. It's on video, and so that does show you that was a hologram, that he really wasn't there. So that's really what, just like you said, Athena, you're about connecting the dots. I'm also about connecting the dots. I think we all are, and it's like, you know, those troops, you know, what you're saying, everything just lines up. So, but I feel like, Peter, we haven't let you talk yet, but I want to hear what you have to say. And also, I know you have like a history that I think is really interesting about, that brings you into this, into today, just like having a passion about, what's going on.
Well, I definitely, I try to do research, and it would be nice if I could like organize what I'm looking at and save it and have some, semblance of order to it, because it's all in my head mostly, and so I don't really know. But the indoctrination thing I wanted to talk about. So, I went to high school in the 80s, again, sleepy town. We're mostly Republican, I think. There was a good mix. We had, Reagan showed up for a campaign stop in, I guess his reelection. And I wonder if her phone cut out.
Oh, darn it. Yeah, it is. Are you there?
Okay, good. And so, but I don't remember, like, I don't remember talking about politics so much as a kid, or like kids, going against each other, going against your parents and all that sort of stuff. There was definitely, organizations like, when I went through Catholic school, we had to do community service, or the Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts and all that. There was that responsibility and duty to your community to give back, and that, which I don't see very much happening anymore, even in those organizations, as they're getting destroyed by the communists, and we see what happened to the Boy Scouts. But so in terms of indoctrination, like, I have high school friends now who don't talk to me because, one, they find out that I like guns, and how could I like guns, because poor little children are getting shot up in schools, and I don't like that. I don't want children to be murdered, and I feel that there's a blatant disregard for that. If you look at the incident at Parkland High School, the cop didn't do anything. They had an officer on duty who is charged to protect the children, didn't run into the school, didn't try to save them, didn't try to do anything. The FBI investigated the kid. So there's definitely some dereliction of duty in terms of our government really protecting us. And I think they're using these situations to advance their policies of, controlling us. But anyway, that's a little tangent. But the indoctrination thing. So, I'm on my. I've been married twice. I have 5 children. First marriage, I didn't spend as much time with the kids as I would like, and I didn't want to talk to them about my politics. I wanted to more, lead by example and show that, but with, I think, schools and universities, so now, my son and I talk, he's 27, and he's been pretty vocal and about, environment and certain things, but I feel like there's been a switch, and I think this George Floyd situation, the BLM, global warming, and all that stuff. I think there's been such a push, and he has completely changed. I met with him on Friday, and literally his visceral hate for Trump coming from all these things, like I was really about to deck my kid in front of all these people at my country club who were sitting down having some food, because he's just like, if anybody can vote for Trump, I will not like that person. I'm like, well, you're sitting here with one and I'm buying food for you. So let's stop that right now. But so him and his girlfriend confronted her parents recently, and they're all supposed to come and visit over Father's Day. So it's going to be very interesting. But so I find it, listening to Amphi's story about California way back when, and how that little cancer of indoctrination has really grown across the country. And how did we let that happen? How is that? And, and I think, look at the country, I think most people are conservative or libertarian or, open to other people being able to do what they want to do. And I think,
live and let live.
I think we just turn like a blind eye, and we're like, oh, it's not going to be that bad, or it's not going to, but it's that bad now, where I have now my, flesh and blood son, threatening me because of my politics, and that scares me, and that could, goes, again, it ties into the Cuba thing. So my father, he was 15 when they left. He was being recruited by the Communist Party, and I haven't put all the pieces together, but recently talking to him, he was being recruited, and I think that was one of probably the biggest motivators to my grandfather for leaving, because he didn't want to lose his son to communism, and he was seeing it tearing families apart, and so socialist communism, whatever you want to call it, it's only good for those people. It's only good for those politicians. Bernie Sanders, he can have 3 homes and make millions of dollars, but he doesn't want anybody else to be able to have that kind of money or have that kind of life. So it's only good for the elites, and so my concern is that I don't think we're going to be able to stop it, and I really think we're on this trajectory where everything's accelerated, and they're doing stuff blatantly now. They're not even hiding it anymore. But people have been so conditioned that they don't see it. So I feel blessed to be amongst all of us here who seem to be, enlightened and open to understanding that there's, something going on. And hopefully, like Athena's talking about, there's a higher power that's guiding this
Mhm.
And I do believe that there is that, almighty that, is doing things and leading us to hopefully some resolution. But I think it's going to be really ugly.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
is everybody else seeing Amphi now sideways?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wonder what you need to tilt your, there you go.
Well,
Okay.
I did here. Okay, now, well, I did. Now it's making it the opposite way, but that's okay. We'll see how it goes.
It's good on our end.
Got it.
So I
Yeah.
want to address some of the things that you brought up, Peter, and I think some of the things that everybody brought up, because people watching might not understand. We're throwing these little things out, but a lot, let's say, I don't know if it's 50% of the population, but a lot of people believe certain things that are lies. And so
Yeah.
I might have forgotten some of them, but I'll try to remember. Like, just for example, global warming. The truth of the matter is that we're entering a mini ice age. So there's actually global cooling. But climate, let's say that then they change it to climate change. Let's talk about climate change for 1 second. It's that oh no, the climate is changing. Well, the climate has always changed and it will always change. But is it human derived, and the answer to that is no. And so when they go out and they say, climate change and we need to do X, Y, and Z, what they're actually doing is lying. But they're doing it so repetitively and with so much virtue signaling that the people who are good and who want to do good will latch on to that and say, we need to do all of these things. But in actuality, what's really being messed up is Earth and the environment, not the climate, not the weather. It's another topic and they're connected in some way, but what's really being damaged is the Earth by fracking and the pollutants and the plastics and the chemicals but who's doing that are the major corporations. The multinational corporations are actually the ones harming the planet. It's all about money. And they are the same ones saying, oh no, climate change. We need the little people to change their entire world because they're causing it. So what people don't understand is that. And so they put the onus on the people and say they're wrong and they're bad and we need to take away their cars. We need to, limit their water usage and create sustainable cities. And the creation of the sustainable cities is part of the communist agenda. We can call it Agenda 21, Agenda 30, but it's all the same thing. And so that's just one example. So if you say, wait a minute, let's talk about the climate change, then you're a climate denier because, oh no, you don't believe in the environment. You don't believe in saving the animals and the water and the earth. So it's confounded. And that's where the problem, that's where the conflict is and why people are divided in our country. Because if you try to speak up for truth, they can't hear you because they've been indoctrinated and they think you're going against what's good and right, when in fact you're standing up for what's good and right, which is the truth, who's actually messing up the environment. And we're not getting down to the solutions. They're avoiding all solutions completely, but we normal regular people can come up with solutions, right? Creating biodegradable materials, using hemp. I mean, the list goes on and on, but so they're really confounding issues to confuse people so that they still get their way, they still get their money, they still follow through with their agenda. It's an agenda. That's why they brought in Greta, for example. And anybody speaking against Greta is bad and wrong, and how could you treat a young child like that? But when we're really trying to say, hey, there's an agenda and they're using her as a tool, and it's psychological manipulation. It's a psyop, psychological operation. But by then, again, their minds are closed and they're not listening, and they think that you're somehow against the environment when you're actually not. And so then that brings us to current events of like, George Floyd. And before I do that, I think, Amphi, did you want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to say, if you look at it in terms as far as climate change or whatever they're calling it now, a couple things I wanted to just interject about it is if you look at Marxist agenda as a religiousness, it's a religious belief, it's a religious ideology. It has all the markers of a cult religion, cult, and you see that now with these the drones, the people that are brainwashed, like sort of like Stepford wives. Everyone just says the same things, and that is cult behavior. That is a dead giveaway that they're involved in a cult religion. And Marxist ideology is definitely exactly like a religion. In fact, it tries to usurp God. It hates God. And which makes you think, I never believed in evil until all of this. Even in my NDE, I didn't see evil. But this has made me realize, wow, okay, so anyway, that's a different topic. But the point that I'm trying to make is you can say it's the corporations, and it is, but even more so, it's the marriage of these corporations with government. And basically, it's the climate change thing is mostly, you didn't mention this, that's the only reason I'm interjecting, is that it is perfect because every socialist society has absolutely skyrocketing levels of environmental destruction and pollution. Freedom of the people goes hand in hand with planetary health, environmental health. People have been trained not to think that way, so they think that's ridiculous. It's the truth. But when you get centralized planning, it destroys the environment faster than any other thing. You should look up, anyone who wants to know about that, look up China, look up what happened in Brazil over the last 20 years, look up what happened in the USSR, the poisoned forests. I mean, the 300,000 whales killed for nothing, for whaling, like it was so poisoned in these places. The same with the JDR, East Germany. All of these places saw absolutely, it was like a true dystopia, just gray awfulness. And so what it is they're the ones doing it, this marriage of corporation with government, which is this Marxist influence that is what married them. And then what they do is really perfectly, they blame it on the little guy somehow. And that's a way to control the little guy more. So, and that's what they want. They don't want freedom or free will. So do you see what I'm saying? I just wanted to mention that that climate change is a way to control human beings.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
It is. Take away their cars, get them into the smart cities, control their food. That's their agenda. Take away, just take away rights, take away liberties. And people don't, the problem is that people who aren't doing their research and they're just listening to mainstream media aren't understanding that. That's why we're doing this talk, because how do you get across these ideas to people? And because they think that we are, I don't know what they think. It's confusing. They think we're conspiracy theorists because they think we're crazy because we believe in weird things, when we're trying to uncover corruption, period. And so that brings us to the thing, with the George Floyd event. And, everybody knows that nobody should be murdering anybody, and cops should be not killing people if needlessly. Obviously out of self-defense on the rare occasion that can happen, but cops do need to have reform and clean up their act, because they are weaponized and bullies, and nobody's going to deny that either. And so the point is that, if I don't know if we want to get into false flags, but we might want to.
Can I say something before we do false flags? Because I have a lot of information for false flags. But going back to what we were just talking about the climate change and the corporations being the controllers, really it's their fault. That's absolutely true. And then how you were mentioning, Effie, about sustainable cities. So I wanted to point out that for every topic that we're going to be discussing, there's what's playing out that's negative, And then right on the other side is the positive. So it's just a matter of taking what they're planning on doing and flipping it to be positive. And I realize that we have to take down the controllers in order to do that. But I think that that's what's part of the draining the swamp. I really think that that's what's happening is those ones, if you're involved in the child sex trafficking pedophile ring, which I believe every single top position on the planet has to be involved in that cult to be that famous, to be that powerful. So it's kind of to the point now, if you're participating in that, like some people were, born into it, some people were blackmailed into it. It doesn't really matter how you got into it, people are into it. And that, I think, is why so many people are rebelling against Trump, because they have blood on their hands to a degree. You know what I mean? And somehow we got to get, and I'm talking, it trickles down into our friendships, our communities, because I have, been talking about these subjects for years, and I've been unfriended by so many people that were so kind, so nice. And I pondered and pondered and pondered. And the only thing I can think is they've got abuse issues, whether they were abused or they were an abuser. Either way, it's a deep, dark thing. So it's almost overwhelming when you look at it. We've all been through that. But what's on the other side, like about the sustainable communities? We have right now so many people that are buying those properties. They are turning their properties into eco places. They are growing their own thing. They are starting their own little communities of light. You know what I mean? That's the flip side. So it's a matter of the people basically taking back the control, and doing it themselves. And I think that we can do it. I do. Anyway,
Oh,
so
I do too. I do too.
I think that's really important to talk about, that, whether we, at today or at some point, talk about solutions and talk about what we can do, because it's almost like the first step is waking up, uncovering the corruption, and knowing that Trump is helping to clear it up. But then what do we do as people to create the lives that we want and move away from that control? So I think that's a really important conversation. And today I actually, just before this, read an article about people who, they saw the COVID madness coming. They saw the shutdowns happening, and they were like, we living in the city, and like, we want to get out of here. There's going to be a shutdown. Let's go to our beach house. Let's go to our farmhouse, or let's move to the country. And these people did that. They moved onto a farm. They moved, into the more wilderness area, and did become more self-sufficient, and decided to keep it that way and not come back to the city. And I always see that these nefarious agendas always have a silver lining. They don't actually work as well as the agenda plans for, and a lot of benefits come to humanity from them. I really believe that there's a divine intervention happening within every one of these. So even if we see like the agendas with Antifa, BLM, riots, and the looting, we can also see that there is some important conversations coming up about racism, and it's maybe it's not really like connected to this event in an authentic way, but these things need to be cleared and healed for humanity anyway. And so lots of good things are coming out of the chaos, right? There's order out of chaos is a real thing in nature, right?
Yes.
So let's get into that a little bit. So from my perspective and all the research that I've seen is that there are about the George Floyd murder. There's a lot of information out there that it was a false flag, and a false flag event is that something is done, and sometimes people are killed during them, but they're an orchestrated event in order to elicit a certain kind of response. So for example, take school shootings. They use
Mhm.
MK Ultra, which is a mind control, trauma-based mind control technique where they use technology, they use torture, they use different things. They can use drugs, they can use actual what is it, voice of God technology it's called. So they take a vulnerable kid, maybe the kid has been on psychiatric drugs almost 100% of the time. The kid has been on psychiatric drugs, and they'll use technology to tell that person to do the shooting. So they'll say that there's going to be a drill that day. There's always a drill happening the same day. And, I don't know the ins and outs of why and how, but the shooting will happen and people will die. People die in these. Some of them are faked scenes and some of them are real deaths. But the point is that it wasn't an authentic murder. It was a mind controlled murder, and usually always with the, like I said, MK Ultra and psychiatric drugs. So anyway, the reason I know all of it, I know this from researching, but also I even know somebody. I have a friend who she had a very big spiritual awakening. And when that happens, your vibration changes. They are monitoring us. They can measure people's vibrations, and they know there are something called targeted individuals. So certain people who know more, they have a higher consciousness. They're aware of more. They may be very psychic, intuitive. They're targeted because they're a danger to society, because they'll start spreading truth. They'll give away the plans. And so I have a friend like that. She had a very big, massive spiritual awakening. And then they started targeting her and used this mind control technology on her. This was because I'm in the DC area, Northern Virginia. The CIA is over here. And they had her drive to the CIA basically to bring her, like, turn herself in, because they like to use people who are very psychic, and they hire people like that, or use people like that. But she was driving there. They were using mind control technology to make her drive herself to the CIA, and she kind of like knew it was happening, but she couldn't stop herself. And so right before she got there, she was able to like turn the steering wheel and make a U-turn. She was able to break out of it right before to get away. But she went that far. I mean, she didn't live that close, probably a 30-minute or more drive. But so I'm not just saying, oh, I read some stuff and oh, I believe it because I'm a conspiracy theorist. No, I don't know why or how, I always have a personal experience that corroborates information. Not always, but a lot.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And so just like what Athena's talking about with the worldwide pedophilia ring, I actually again have multiple corroborating personal experiences that tell me it's 100% true, all of it, and I know a lot about it, unfortunately. So going back,
it makes sense though, doesn't it? Don't you think it makes sense? Like,
well,
I really think that if people could understand that, like, I don't mean to shock people awake, but honestly, there's so much darkness, so much web. I mean, I'm talking, we've been researching years. I know for me, I have been steadily researching for 11 years now, like almost like day and night, and not knowing exactly why. But there's nothing that I have not looked into to be able to fully understand it. And I don't think people have time to do that. I mean, that's why I am always kind of trying to show them about the pedophilia, and not in a shocking way, but to me, that's the bottom line. Like, right, you've drawn the line there. You know what I mean? You've crossed the line. Sorry. You've crossed the line when you work with children. To me, or you abuse children. To me, anybody who's got a compassionate heart, right there, that's enough. That's enough to want to take down the deep state. You don't need to know about all this other stuff, because all this other stuff is terrible too, but it's not as bad as what's happening.
And that's
what
the
I mean?
key. that ring is the key. It's actually the top of every single thing we're talking about today. Everything that's wrong in the world, that's at the top of it. That rules the world. And if people don't understand that or believe it, look into it. It's true. That is what rules the world. It rules every topic from the top down.
It's the black roots of everything.
It's the root of everything. And once you learn about it, you'll find that out. That's why I've done 17 years of research myself. So then I gave all that kind of information to lead us up to now, like with the George Floyd thing. That was purposefully done. They already planned in advance for last year or years prior. They already, hired the Antifa people for rioting. They already they've been organizing the BLM groups for many, many years. And so they wanted to create a race war in the United States. They have step-by-step things that they are doing in order to take down this administration or anybody fighting the deep state. And so we had the COVID, which we can talk about, and then we had the George Floyd. And so with that, the riots came, and now we have the defunding of the police. And so people who don't know the agendas are being manipulated to support nefarious groups and actions. The Black Lives Matter, all of their funding is going into specific Democratic candidates. That list has just been released. So what is it? Act Blue or something?
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
That's what Act Blue, I think, is a big organization.
Yeah.
Funding.
Right. And so the Black Lives Matter money is going into that. They're not supporting Black people. So it's important for people to follow the money to find out why this is not an organic organization. This is not actually supporting the cause. And so if we want to fight racism, then we should do it in a way that's not supporting the ones who are creating false flag events and trying to, overthrow governments.
BLM was created on a lie. The whole hands up, don't shoot Michael, thing in St. Louis. I mean, after investigation and Obama's Justice Department even, and then they buried it, but they even said that it was a justified shooting. It was the person was, stole the cop's gun, was shooting at the cop. It was a false, just like the Floyd thing. They these situations to feed on emotions and fear. But then, but you also have to, when you talk about the money, look at what happened during Obama, and I'd have to do some more research on this, but when Obamacare was created, all these organizations, these community organizations, were given money, federal dollars, to go help teach people how to sign up. What if they did? I don't think they did it. I think they take this money and now they're getting federal money that's then being funneled back into campaigns. The website, right? Michelle Obama's friend who had the company, Canadian company, to build the website for an exorbitant amount of money that doesn't, no company. I mean, Facebook, Google, even a mom and pop shop, you don't need to spend that kind of money to build a website. Massive amount of fraud, massive amount of money funneled. And then if we want to get off topic and talk about something else, we can talk about Planned Parenthood and their money that they get, and that how that gets then funneled back in. I'm trying to think, what was the anti-war organization that was around during Bush? I think they're still around, but they sort of disbanded and started being called something else. So they always change their name. They always fracture into different groups, but they're all at the core, the same,
It's the
communist
same ideology.
group
Yeah.
that
It's always the same.
different name, whatever, and they're good at their messaging, and they're good at getting people to buy into these ideals of what's happening. Like the thing about Trump just taking away rights for LGBT transgender. Well, if
Mm-hmm.
and I think Amphi, did you posted something about
Yeah.
that? I think on Facebook.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah, I
sent
did.
I sent that to my son because he's like, "How could Trump do this on the anniversary of Pulse nightclub?" And I'm like, "All right, here, read this." So, but and then they keep, like really, if school shootings were that prevalent, why do they have to keep bringing up the same three, right? The Newtown, the one in
Sandy Hook.
Colorado,
Sandy
the one
Hook.
in Florida, right? There aren't a lot of school shootings, but they keep bringing it up, and they keep trampling on the poor deaths of these people. Well, or if they even did happen, and then
Yeah.
if a parent speaks up against that, and see, I need to get more prepared. There's a father in Connecticut who's a pro-gun guy, and he's talking about how the government created this situation. They create well, and if you look at, so we have a couple of things going on right now. So George Floyd, police brutality, which is real, it happens. There's certainly excessive force, but they're also, cops have immunity, and that goes back to a law I think in the 90s that Biden created to help create immunity for police officers. They should be prosecuted under the same law as anybody else can. But then, Stephanie, as you were talking about the school shootings, I started to think about this, gun-free zones. That also goes back to Biden. He's the guy that created the gun-free school zones, and having those soft targets to make it easy for these government operatives to go in and shoot people up indiscriminately.
Yeah.
It's a tangled web. The government creates the problem, then tries to create the solution, and their solution is to take our rights away.
Exactly. So the school shootings, the agenda behind them is to take away the Second Amendment, is to take away guns.
Look at what they do now. If they had their way and they disarmed America, just think of what they could do. And
God,
with an
it would be another genocide. We would have another genocide. I'm convinced of that if we don't. And I do believe, I think it's going to get ugly, but I didn't want to say something so scary, but enough people are brainwashed now against Trump supporters, especially, that I think they're out of their minds, and I think a lot of them really are out of their minds, and they would back genocide. Right. They would support it.
Yeah.
So thank God.
I always wondered, how the Civil War happened and brother against brother and all that stuff. But, I go back to the incident with my son on Friday, and his anger, I've never seen that from him. And sad. It's all about one man, and it is scary to me.
Yeah. You're not the only parent I've heard tell that same story and that same distraught look on your face. I mean, I've been hearing it from close friends for the past year. Like, what happened to my daughter? What happened to my son? Like I've heard it several times from close friends. I don't have children myself, but yeah, you're not alone. Yeah, they've done a great job with.
Again, they do it in plain sight. And I go back to Obama and where he was telling, there's that one clip of him talking about when you sit down for Thanksgiving, get in your family's face, and they encourage this. They encourage this.
Yeah.
They encourage bullying and hate, but yet then they dress it up as, but they're not the hateful ones. We're the hateful racists. But I used to visit my kids in Michigan, I used to take them to Belle Isle, Belle Isle's a really cool little island outside of Detroit. They have a zoo there, and but they have beaches, and mostly inner city, African Americans go there. So I would take my little white kids who grew up in this, sheltered town. We'd go and hang out at the beach so they could play with, like, and see that there's not such a difference. And I'm the conservative, libertarian, taking my kids to do this, and we would go to Dearborn to the Middle Eastern Festival, and just so they would be exposed to different cultures and different things. And now he's trying to teach me, and I had to remind him about all those things. And I'm a musician. I've played at the Pride Festival in DC with a band fronted by a conservative gay man, and so I've been in different cultures and different situations, and I'm open to supporting people living how they want to live. But I don't want to see people die indiscriminately, and I don't want to see this black on black crime and death in Chicago and other cities, in Baltimore, and run by Democrats for decades, and they need to be held accountable.
May I interject?
Start off on a tangent. I'm sorry. I'm a little passionate about all this.
So, no, you're great. No, you're great. I just wanted to, before I forget, I wanted to say one of the things, darn it. Well, I know one thing I wanted to say, which is that if you guys ever get a chance, oh my goodness, especially for understanding your kids right now. Well, okay, now I get it. I have two things. The first thing I wanted to say, very typical of Marxism, and you may know this because your father was there, or your grandfather, your father. Very typical is to turn the children against the parents, against the elders. Respect for elders goes out the window in socialist, communist, Marxist societies because they don't want you to learn the old ways. And they don't want the older folks getting in the way of the new world. This is the controllers. I'm not talking about the kids. The kids are taught, and if you'll notice in movies coming out of Hollywood and in commercials, constantly the parents are idiots and the children are these incredibly wise beings, which is not realistic. Sorry. Children do. It's amazing. Out of the mouths of babes, there's incredible things, but that is not the reality 100% of the time that you're raising children. They're not, but you see these children, these teenagers with wisdom and with the parents are made out to look like idiots. I see that over and over again. That's on purpose. That is Marxist brainwashing. But the other thing I wanted to say is, if you guys ever get a chance, any of you, I posted a few of these videos. I'm late to coming to this, to discovering James Lindsay. But James Lindsay, a physicist, he spent 2 years studying social justice, college, university, what is it called? Intersectionalism. And the other one, anyway, he studied what has been being taught to our kids over the past 10 years in the university. And he was shocked. He is overwhelmingly shocked to this day at what's been happening, because what he has said, I'm trying to make it brief, is basically what I studied was society destroying, civilization destroying ideology. And that he said that every place where this ideology, this new generation of this ideology, every institution, every church, everything that it enters into, workplaces, it will destroy the business, it will destroy the church, it will destroy whatever. It's a mind virus. And what it is constant racial work. This idea that we need to eradicate racism, which, by the way, is very overblown. Though they're the ones who, the media is the one who keeps this racism alive. I'm sorry, but I know this. I know it. I've seen it in my own life, that things will be fine, and then they'll start pushing the race issue again, and suddenly it's tense between the races, and so that really sucks. But they need that. They need that to push their agenda. They need they need the racial tension. But so he said that anything, this mind virus, which is what does he call it? It's an ideology of revenge. It's grievance. It's just an ideology of grievances. So imagine, what can withstand constant complaining or constant dripping of grievances? Can any individual? That's abusive to do that to someone, just constant tearing them down. Well, that's basically what this ideology that they're being taught. There's nothing good about it. It is a destroyer. It's destructive. In this ideology, facts are considered a white man's construct. Consistency is considered a white man construct, and therefore those white man constructs are bad. So just let that sink in. Do away with facts, do away with need for evidence, do away with consistency in society. Think about a court of law. You see what I'm saying? So definitely check out, especially for you, Peter, when you're thinking about your son. Oh my goodness, even try to share it with him, because any of the James Lindsay talks are just phenomenal. Sorry, everyone. I didn't mean to talk for too long.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
Of course, I'm done.
Oh, no, it's exactly what you were saying. About the control. And I think, once again, if you kind of we followed the line all the way to the pedo ring, and mind control, I've been pondering this for so many years too, and I'm convinced the biggest, quickest solution to break mind control is to kill your television. Just like the song, like Ned Atomic's Dustbin, kill your television from the 90s. Because honestly, that is the link to the darkness, because it is so bad. It does control. And also, the music, we're talking about kids. I raised my two sons in the Middle East, in Jordan, from ages, one was 3 and the other one was 6 at the time, for 6 years. So I basically, all their informative years, they were in Jordan. And I raised them off the Matrix. So we had the school of life. So our days were exploring things and learning these cultures. Bottom line is they had a very open mind, very, very well-rounded. They have respect for authority, all of these really great things. We come back to America. Within 1.5 years of them living with their father, who's got a different, more lax viewpoint, they are now playing the blast 'em up video games, which I understand is American culture, but I had made it almost 14 years without them getting those images, of killing other people for fun. But in 1 year of being back to America, they're playing the video games. Then they're listening to the local music here in America, which was rap. And so they played me some of their favorite bands. One of them was Suicide Boys. I thought they were joking, because they know my beliefs. I thought that they were just playing a joke, they found it on the internet, but no, they actually really like these guys, who are promoting suicide. And then they showed me other guys, all the rappers, and I'm listening to the songs. It's all about your life is worthless. And my son, he tells me about reincarnation. He said, well, Mom, you always told me about reincarnation. He said, so what does it matter if I'll just kill myself and I'll be back? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I was like, you're joking with me, right? And he was not joking. This is the agenda that's being taught to our kids. And so how do you combat this? It's, the only way is to take down this deep, dark web. Because let me just give you one bit of hope here. I just found this yesterday, but Harvey Weinstein, whatever his name is, who he is, right? The big Hollywood guy. So all of the movies are Weinstein Company, because I've even tried to watch Netflix, and every single movie is produced by him. So there's no way to partake in Hollywood and not give him the energy that he has, built all of these movies on. But anyway, so we know he's arrested, right? Well, Trump just mentioned recently about taking over a certain charity. And so I did and I have this, I can pull it up. But so I followed the link on this charity, and it turns out that basically one of Trump's friends is buying out the Weinstein Company. So he's a good guy buying out the Weinstein Company, which is Hollywood. You see what I'm saying about draining the swamp?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't on the news because they're not going to report, hey, we lost. Our power is going to be going down. We won't be creating those violent, sexy movies for your kids anymore. We just have to kind of wait and have faith. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was very, very, very good news for me too, because I am ultra concerned. So now, to me, the biggest thing is, how do we get people to turn the TV off? Because if they could just turn their TV off and get their news from independent media, and I've tried to point this out to people, so, maybe the people listening to this right now will understand. But think about it. Who do you trust more? Someone who is paid to speak a script, or somebody who is not paid, who works for free in their home, starving to find out the truth about what is going on and reports that? I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. I would much rather, I choose the independent researcher because they have nothing to gain, and they're not getting paid. And so this is kind of like, if we could get people to just at least take knowledge of that and just give the independent channels a chance, because there are so many people who have spent so many years researching their little topic, their field, and they're experts, way more than a news anchor reading their script. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, you look at what happened. So Cheryl Atkinson, right? She tries to. She worked, I guess, for CBS or something, and tried to speak the truth. Loses her job. Gets pushed out because they don't want that. They don't want independent thought. They just, you can look at 12 different channels, and they all use the same wording.
Right.
And it's the constant barrage of the words that they want used.
Yeah.
And then Hollywood and all these like the video now about, I don't even know, hate, and they, all these prominent actors. I don't even know who they are, but I don't know. I read the Roald Dahl kids, books to my kids, and way back when he wrote those, the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, he talked about, you just destroy your TV. So it hasn't happened yet.
No, I got rid of my TV, and
now you have it on your phone. So I mean, you can get 24/7.
It's really a stark contrast when you do get rid of your TV. I got rid of mine in 2009. And once you're away from TV and you're away from that mind control, you enter the real world and you can see what a lie that is, television, right? And there's actually technology, probably all of you know this, but patented technology that are like electromagnetic waves coming through, and I might not be saying it right, maybe it's some other kind of waveform, but coming through the TV, whether it's on or off, to for mind control, to affect your emotions. It's really bad, and people probably don't even know that. And so if you do have a TV, you should actually unplug it, not just turn it off. But in order to turn that technology off, you have to unplug it. I can't be near a TV. Even just being near a TV affects my body and my mind.
Stephanie, I actually have been thinking a lot about if they've amped up the frequencies through the television, which is why you're not able to penetrate their critical thinking mind anymore. I mean, when you're like, all of my friends are like hippies, creatives, the free thinkers, you know, all of this, and I can't get through to them. I mean, I leave freaked out, and they attack me, and I'm like, something is going on.
Yeah, it does.
Manipulation. Gotta be.
They do.
I even wonder.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go and then you can go.
Yeah.
So they use frequency through the air. They actually emit frequency through our atmosphere for mind control. I don't know if any of you knew that, but that's what's probably making it worse. And so I do something called Life Between Lives Hypnotherapy, where I take the client, we go into a past life, but then after that we leave the body and go into the spirit world, so that the person is in their soul state, and then their soul is actually speaking through them. And with that level of information, it's not something that the client knows about. It's actually the soul has more access to knowing. And so in one of the sessions I did, I think it was last year or the year before, the soul said, there are frequencies that they are emitting into your air for mind control of the population. And what breaks mind control is sound healing. And I do sound healing. So crystal singing bowls, for example, Tibetan singing bowls, other, tuning forks, whatever tools you have for sound healing breaks mind control. And I mean, I never knew that, but that's pretty cool. And I do it with every client who comes to my office.
What about the Oregon pucks?
Yeah, that blocks
the EMF for the computers, right?
EMF. I have them all over here too.
I think that you're absolutely right. I've been thinking about the frequency thing and studying that forever because of the pyramids, my interest in the pyramids. But that's basically, I think, the solution. We have to get together, make music, make sound, make happiness, make laughter, and then kind of unplug in a way. But then that's easy for us to do because we already know the truth. But what do we do about all the people that are being manipulated and are out there fighting? You know what I mean? It's like, are they part of the agenda? Because I do realize this is a play, and you have to have this division. Like, I think the protesters that are going by my street all the time, because you know what? Some of the things that they're doing, like they tore down a statue, not here, but I think it was in Washington, D.C. or whatever. Well, that was a statue of a slave owner. I mean, think about it. Would you be happy about having your oppressor being honored? Okay, so maybe that statue does need to come down. I found it a little interesting that some of the places that the looters targeted were Target, were Walmart, were Nike. Okay, Nike, the head of Nike, the CEO of Nike resigned a couple months ago. And guess what? I did a little research on that man. He's a huge pedophile. He has perverse artwork, or he did, in his office at Nike, not even just his personal home, in his office, in your face. You know what I mean? And so when I was looking up research on just, this Nike, I wanted to get a screenshot of it. I found that Nike stores have been set on fire for years. And I'm wondering, is that part of tearing down the matrix? Are those like the termites that come and eat out the dead tree from a spiritual point of view? You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like they look like they're bad, but in a way they're good because they're clearing out the bad. And they're also bringing it up. Like, now everybody's looking at, who is Antifa? I mean, when I saw people coming into Denver that I didn't recognize, and I observe everything. So I just got a vibe. Like, I could just tell they had bigger backpacks. They would have like a duffel bag. They'd have their dog. Just people wandering my neighborhood that I had never seen before. You know what I mean? So that's when I'm like, And then I go down to the protest, And then they weren't like normal protests. I've been to protests around the world. These ones were very, very angry. And just when I was about to kind of go into the crowd to listen to what they were saying, because they were chanting, right when I do that, bam, tear gas goes off, bullets fly, and I'm like, ah, I go running away. Well, it turns out they threw a rock at the cop's head.
Yeah.
So they were being provoked. So like putting all of this together, I'm like, wait a minute, these people are from out of town. There's two kinds of protesters here. And this is the beginning. So I started warning my friends in California who hadn't had their protesters yet and said, just be prepared. They mocked me. They all my little friends made a huge joke. And Athena, I can't believe you're saying get out with your guns. And I'm like, hell yeah, I am. When you have people coming, trying to burn, like I caught a guy, if I weren't on watch here, there was this time they funneled all the crowd off of Colfax down the alley to our house, right? I'm on the second level. I could see all of these people coming into this church parking lot across the street, right? They all had bottles. I saw them grab our trash, take it to the center of the street, disperse it all. And it was like, I felt like I was watching a KKK thing, but not on the screen. But it was just like they just came in and were ready to destroy. I ran down. I told the owner who has defense. I said, Dan, get out there right now. He did in the nick of time. I mean, he went out right at the right time when they were just about to set the dumpsters on fire, which are underneath an entire electrical system, which is next to the church. They were just about to throw a bottle in my friend's car and explode everything. And I'm just like, you got to be smart here, people. You know what I mean? But
of course.
What does all of that do, though? So, okay, just to wrap that story up, what happened that night in California, my friends did not listen to me. And I don't know if it's related or not, but the oldest bar in town was burnt down that night. And it sucks. It does suck. But I was like part of me just wants to say, I told you, like, why do you have to fight each other? Like, if somebody's giving you advice to help for your well-being, why not heed it? And some people did. And we've seen the videos of, like, I think Coeur d'Alene, they were armed in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and Antifa, there's this one video of Antifa coming down the street to just ransack the town, and all of the locals with their guns just walked. It was like a total war, and they just basically kicked their ass. Sorry.
I know. I love that video. Hallelujah. That was a good feeling for me. I'm sorry, but it feels good to see Americans standing up and getting off their butts.
Right.
And
because we never do. It's all the other countries have been protesting forever. I never see Americans. And we're sitting here crying, well, we had to sit home during COVID while we're locked down. Oh, we can only shop, smoke weed, and drink alcohol. I mean, you know what I mean? We're like, you were over there during the Syrian war. What happened to those people? Their entire country's bombed. They're coming over telling me stories about that they had to watch their mother being raped, their sister's legs hacked off. I mean, horrific things. And nobody cared. And we're sitting here over in America just crying, oh, we got to be locked down. And I'm like, oh, we're devastated, our business. And I have compassion.
Well, I disagree with you there. We're not Syria, and we shouldn't be locked down. There's no way. It's absolutely destroying people. I know someone who's just being, her business is done, and she had a healing business.
Yes.
And we did a protest recently, but no, I get what you're saying.
The point, I'll wrap it up. The point is basically, it takes some troublemakers. It takes the radicals in the world to shake things up, to get us off our butt, to wake up and see, wow. And you know what? Then my point of this series is we don't have it that bad. Our country is not destroyed. The businesses, some got looted, and that's terrible. I don't think that that's right at all. Absolutely not. And I don't think it's right to go around destroying things. But I do find it interesting that the buildings that they're destroying. So anyway, that's it.
No, I totally hear you. No, my point was just more about the lockdown. I'm not seeing anything where people are telling me that I have to obey, especially when I was certain right from the get. COVID was a lot. And so I can't, QAnon going on. It is suspect to me and very, very upsetting to me when we're told, let's put it this way. We could plunge into a Great Depression, and it's not because the market failed. It's because people were told by a government to do it. They're told to shut down businesses. So the government destroyed incomes and whole businesses of people. I'm not even talking about the looting. I'm talking shutting down the economy for that long is absolutely, it's unheard of. We've never done anything like it across the globe. And it was all based on a big fat lie. And I'm still very angry about that. So I like to be too, and my big thing is people's freedom. So that's why I have, a bristling that happens when someone says they shouldn't be crying about having shut down their business. I'm like, nobody should be telling them to shut down their business. They should be able to make that decision on their own. Same with masks.
I have to ask you this because
yeah,
I have been doing so much research into what I believe why the system is being shut down, which is to take down the pedophiles.
I know.
Okay, so let's just say you would not be willing to sit home for 2 to 3 months and have your business shut down to eliminate the deepest, darkest web on the planet.
No, because
we were not told the truth. We were not told why it's happening.
I know exactly what you're talking about, honey. I know about the QAnon stuff, but no, never. I'm never going to give up. And it does. Wait. I will never give up my inner freedom to some savior that I think is going to save me. You never ever, personally, from my point of view, that is a recipe for how many times have you heard I'll save you? So yeah, I don't, it doesn't hold stuff. I totally fit. That's what's happening and going to be the truth at the end. I absolutely do. Ask, Stephanie, she knows I'm completely supportive of it, but no, I'm not supportive of standing back and letting the and it's mostly blue states. It's mostly the blue states who are doing it. It's not the red state. It's the state that is trying to drive the economy down. It's not Trump. Do you see what I mean?
I'm not saying it's Trump. I'm not saying it's Q either, because I've been researching this far beyond before Q even came into speak. Now, as soon as I speak, people automatically assume, and I've never even really followed Q. I mean, I do listen to the 22 report every day, and they kind of give me a general synopsis, but I've been on my trail on my own. I think that Q did a great part in just getting people to dig for their own answers.
Yes.
But what I'm talking about is what's happening outside my window during all of COVID. I had helicopters above. I live with downtown. I can see from my window. I live 8 blocks from the Capitol. I live right over here on this side is where the train station is. There's also a stadium. Okay, so if you know anything about sex trafficking, those clues will make you understand what I'm talking about. There's underground dumbs underneath me. Every single night during the lockdown, or not the lockdown, whatever, when we were quarantined or whatever, there was helicopters in the sky. Every night from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. They waited till everybody would go to sleep. I also compared these stories with my friends in Palm Desert. So my son, he lives in Salton Sea, and he can see San Diego and Mexico from where he lives. He was telling me, Mom, there's fires. I've been seeing fires for weeks. So what do? I look up, he also would tell me about the earthquakes. So what did I do? I got the underground dumb charts. I got the earthquake charts. I got everything. They all lined up. The smoke in the air lined up. The flares, them being over the downtown areas. Were like, there was a restaurant fire at a Chinese restaurant. Well, you know what? I suspect underground trafficking, sex trafficking there.
And just to let everybody know that what DUMBs are, they're deep underground military bases, and these DUMBs underground have been used for the child sex trafficking. And so what we're talking about is how during the shutdown, the DUMBs were being cleared out. There was a rescue mission happening worldwide that was coordinated. This is the presumption based on some insider information leaking out. It's not something that we all know for a fact, but based on connecting dots, that's what Athena is talking about, and what I also saw. I live right outside of DC, and in the beginning of the shutdown, every night I was having major helicopter activity flying by here. And I thought the same thing that you're thinking, Athena. I was like, that this is a rescue operation for the kids. Anyway, I'm going to let you continue, Athena.
Well, I think I think you're right, because again, like you just offered another support in support of that, because it was all at the same time. You know, I'm talking, this is real physical evidence. This is no longer in my mind, my fantasy of how I want the world to be. All of a sudden, things are actually happening. The world is really shut down. Wow. I mean, what are the chances of that? That's just not random. So you have your two scenarios. You have the bad guys and the good guys. So you got to look at both agendas, because both things are happening, because we live in a world of polarity, and time is infinite, and in timelines. I won't get into that, but everything is happening here at once. So let me just go back to the Denver thing, because I did see, my friend drives around because she's from Denver. She has a place out by Denver International Airport. So a lot of people who know conspiracy stuff know that at one point that was the Illuminati escaping ground, where it's like hundreds of levels of floors underneath, and underneath where I'm sitting exactly right now. And so she has horse property out there. She was out there, and I was telling her my theory about, you know, don't worry, they're just rescuing the kids. And she's like, oh my God. I was out by this area. There were 1,000 trucks, Athena, 1,000 construction trucks all in a row. And there was a big group of Mexicans. I'm just saying that because that's what they were, to dig, I guess. I don't know. That's what she told me. Then she said there was a big tube, like 25 feet in diameter, going 800 miles around the perimeter of this certain area, with one part going in the earth, and giant tractors, like digging tractors and a crane at the same time when we're locked down. You know what I mean? Right over the DUMBs. And then there's the whole tent stuff. I have a lot of information. If we ever want to go into detail, I can show you all the slides, all the information, the photographs I've taken, the photographs my friends have sent me, to where I just have to believe that. You know what I mean? And that's what's so complicated, is because, you know, the people are saying, well, why did they lie to me? Well, you can't go and tell your plan. This dark agenda, there's so many dark people everywhere. You know what I mean? You can't tell them what's going on. So anyway, so Peter, you were going to say something.
Well, I just had a question, like, so the defunding the police and all that, I mean, do you think that there's a reason they're doing that to stop these, you know, roundups and things like that?
I've wondered, because, you know, one of the reasons why I think the protests started is because that was the day that Clinton had to go to court. And that was like one of the buildings that was targeted, you know, and so I think that there's just one wave after another of all of these things. I do have to say one other thing. I think that these protests were definitely planned, and so was COVID, because like a couple of months before, I went to Safeway. I never go to Safeway, but I went, and they gave me these little coupons for a Monopoly game. And so I was like, well, what if I win? You know, so I just opened them all up, and I won 2 hand sanitizers. And I thought, hand sanitizers? Like, why would I win the hand sanitizers? I mean, it was just shocking to me, because I've always been anti-hand sanitizer.
Yeah, me too.
So, and I still have those, by the way. Anyway, and then here comes this COVID thing, and I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Now that I actually need the hand sanitizer, I bet you they're sold out, you know? So then fast forward, I'm sitting here, and all of a sudden I hear these gunshots. right outside my corner. I'm like, oh my God, I duck and cover, thinking of the Middle East. I'm like, oh my God, finally I sneak around the corner, I look out, it's the cops. It's the cops having a practice shoot right here on the corner. This was 2 months ago. So then, before the protest, I was looking to get my cell phone unlocked. And so I was looking online for how to unlock it, unlock stores near me. And I found one on Colorado Boulevard. And so I'm looking it up and it said closed till June 9th. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? And I clicked over on another street, open. And I thought, wow, well, they're expecting something on Colorado Boulevard. I mean, how do they know it's going to be closed till June 9th? You know what I mean? Sure enough, the next day, the next couple days, out breaks these protests. What happens? Colorado Boulevard, looted, rioting. When did it reopen? This Monday, June 9th. And on top of that, the day before the protests, and I have a video of this, the police again were outside with this practice shooting, scared the crap out of me again. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, how don't they have like a shooting range to practice this? I mean, they had the target of the man and they're everybody taking their turn right there. Well, it turns out that they were sound testing for guns days before the protest. Well, what's down the street from my house? The police department. What's this street right here was blocked off by SWAT teams. I had SWAT tanks going up and down my street right here. They had to have known. You see what I'm saying? So they're allowing all of this to unfold. They allowed, just like you see the video of the cops standing by, telling the woman what to spray paint on the wall. And you saw cops standing by, just, people coming straight up to their face. And I understand it's a delicate balance because people needed to protest. And so that was cool that they could hold their strength there with people screaming and spitting at them and doing everything they were, which is terrible stuff. But there's still an agenda, right? And they haven't taken the boards. They're still up, you guys. Still up.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, you could hear him all the way. So yeah.
I mean, I don't understand how with all the COVID stuff that they allowed all these protests to manifest themselves and to do all this stuff. There's an incident that happened in Maryland. There was a no-knock raid. There's this guy, Lemp is his last name. He was Duncan Lemp, shot in his sleep. His parents wanted to protest the police department. They were shut down. You said you cannot protest because you'll be in defiance of the Maryland COVID laws or regulations, and we'll arrest you. So, and that was from, I think, the county of Montgomery County where it happened. So on one hand, they won't allow it, but then all these, you can have like 7 or 11 funerals for George Floyd. You can have all these protests,
right,
in violation of all these, idiotic COVID things. So it's like, I don't know. I don't know if I.
Yeah, I don't know either. So yeah, it's not just that. It's that in California, at least, we had tons. We're still in lockdown over here. It's awful. Our governor is a total deep state puppet, absolute horrendous. He's a tyranny. He is a authoritarian, and he thinks he's like a king. It's horrible. Anyway, you just have to trust on that. It's awful. But we had all kinds of protests here, huge turnouts for protesting shelter in place here in California, and the press just absolutely nationwide, worldwide, the press was ripping people to shreds, talking they shouldn't get medical treatment, those protesters. As soon, and just 5 short days later, the Black Matters protests are totally fine. And there's even a letter that health people signed, like I don't even know, doctors, some nurses, whatever, 1,000 people signed that said, basically literally says right there in the letter that it's okay to protest for Black Lives Matter, but it's not okay to protest shelter in place. They just spelled it right out for you. So yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I'm not.
Shelter in place a charity? I don't know what shelter in place is.
We had all kinds of protests for a lot of Trump supporters, actually, protesting their freedoms being taken away to run their business. And so shelter, the media didn't tell you about it, probably. We had a huge protest in Sacramento, which is very close to me, all over Huntington Beach, all over Southern California, even in my town, which we also have a Black Lives Matter. They had gasoline one night. We're gonna set. So yeah, I've seen that as well. We've had both, but the mainly told we shouldn't give medical care. These are literal things that were printed. Medical ethicists weigh in on what shelter-in-place protests should be allowed medical care once they contract COVID. And there was, I hope, leftists saying, I hope you will die from COVID because you are awful selfish people for spreading COVID.
Yep.
And then literally 5 days later, it's okay. And I'm not even exaggerating. Peter knows. So this is it. I believe it's all an agenda, absolutely. And I don't see anything. I'm having a hard time seeing anything good in what has been the George Floyd LM protest. I know there is good always in every situation, so I will give you that. But this is all an effort to take on and to stop the right, whatever they happening.
And Effie,
yeah,
you're we're not getting a good audio from you, so we're missing about 50% of what you're saying. I mean, we're getting the gist, that's for sure. So that's why I keep letting you talk. But
well, I'm done with what I was saying.
okay,
yeah.
I don't know.
But I don't know how to fix it.
I know. I don't know what we can do.
It's all right. Let's just see if I move it around. But go ahead, talk amongst yourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's 5:30, almost 5:30. So is there are you thinking about it maybe time to wrap it up or?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Does anybody have anything they're dying to say before we do?
Oh, we could probably go on for hours, but we can't.
Yeah.
But
no, I know. It's great. So when are we going to do this again? That's
yeah,
what
let's do it again so we can plan for that. And people who are listening, leave comments to let us know if you like this and you want us to do it. I mean, whether you say you want us to do it or not, I think we probably all want to, but let us know how it is and what you want to hear more about, if anything. But we all have a lot more to say. I know that. So thank you so much, each of you, Peter, Amphi, Athena, for joining together today to bring enlightenment into what's happening. And I think something great we can talk about in the future is not only the corruption, but also what you brought up today, Athena, which is the bright side, the light side. What can we as humanity do to remind each other that we're all one and that this is a play, and how do we want to be remembered in our lifetime of how we were during this play of division, which is really a farce, because we're really not divided, we're united. And that's really a message that we want to spread, because the people who are being deceived are also in separation. And sometimes we're in separation too, because we want to take them by the shoulders and say, wake up, but really we know that they are being deceived, and we want unity. So it's frustrating. But anyway,
I want to just show you guys my protest sign, because it's exactly what you just said.
Oh, good.
I didn't didn't know what to say because I have so many things to say.
Oh my gosh, that's so perfect.
I love that.
Yeah, and then I have my my great shift of humanity, just to remind people that we are in big changes here.
Yeah.
That was a great.
Yeah, Athena, that was a good run. And I want to make sure to tell you that is, and Stephanie, what Stephanie just reiterated, it's excellent. Absolutely, to find the strength and the positivity in it and not just harp on the negative, which is what I absolutely appreciate that reminder as well. So yeah, in the future, if we do this again, I'd love to hear more about that.
Yes.
And I'm in agreement. There's much more that unites all of us than divides us, and we have to work on getting that out to the people to you know, that we can quell this dissension amongst and bring the power back to the people.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, thanks
Nice to
for
meet
being
you.
Take care.
Bye.